on for the Gear Podcast. G'day.
Particularly gruff and aggressive today, Troy.
Thank you, Uncle Leon. How you going, mate?
Pretty good. Pretty good. Having an all right kind of day.
Yeah? No.
What about you, mate?
Oh, yeah, I'm just living my life. Just living day by day. I did a couple of gigs on the weekend, a couple of, 3 setters, sang the whole thing. Haven't done that for a little while. So, yeah, maybe that's why I'm a little bit gruff, but, getting through.
Back on the horse, mate.
Back on the wagon. Off the wagon. On the wagon. I don't know.
It's a good question. I don't know. Depends what you consider the wagon.
Hey, good point.
Speaking of the wagon, though, Troy, I feel like I'm back on the wagon of anti-gas, meaning I'm having that, like, when you just have those self-loathing moments where you're like, I need to sell some stuff.
Why would you feel like that, Uncle Leo? What's happened in life to make you feel like you need to sell some stuff, mate?
Well, it normally happens after I buy stuff.
Oh, you bought something, did you, mate? What did you buy?
Mate, are you aware of a guitar player called David Grissom?
Oh, yeah, I think I've heard of him before.
Guitar.
Yeah.
So he has this company called Paul Reed Smith. They make him a guitar that's pretty nifty, and I bought one of them.
Nice.
So, you have that initial honeymoon of how good is new stuff, and then you realize you have too much stuff anyway. So, yeah, the wheeling and dealing begins.
Something's got to go. Yeah, I do that from time to time. I've been pretty good, I think, with my spending recently. But I think when my daughter was born in that first month, so the problem, this, but I had about a month where I wasn't working, took some time off, and I was up all night just giving her cuddles and trying to get her to sleep. So what I would do in that time would be to jump on the internet and look at guitar amp switches and how, like, just ways of spending money that I don't have. And so, that's the last time I went and did a big sort of thing like cut some stuff to make some room for more stuff, at least mental room, and not feel bad about having some new cool stuff come in the door.
Yeah, the mental aspect of it, I think, is a pretty big one, especially, you've got a lot of guitars and a lot of gear, but the number of hangers that I have in this room, it's full.
Yeah.
So it's also that element of, well, I kind of like that as a physical barrier on the number of things you should own. It's kind of like, as something comes in, maybe you should make some room.
How many do you have at the moment? Last count. Have you checked? Guitar wise.
Let me just do a very quick. There's at least 30 probably.
But you've got more than that, right?
Many more.
Yeah,
many more in various states of disrepair.
Yeah.
I think most of the ones, if I look around, pretty much everything here you can plug in and play it, and maybe not gig it, but you could definitely record with them.
Yep.
They're probably not all in a totally gigging state. Someone would need like a crusty knob here and there, or an output jack that's a little bit intermittent, or new strings. That's always the big one. So
yeah. I'm sort of the same. I reckon I've got 18 hangers in the sort of the lounge room out there, with like lining the walls, and then the guitars I play more often for sessions, or that I just want to have close, there's probably about 6 or 7 of those, and then I've got about 4 or 5 guitars at home. So I think in total I've got somewhere around 33 at this point.
Yeah,
but
right.
The amount of guitars that I have that are, as you say, in various states of disrepair, like pickups that need to be changed, or that I've started changing and they're not done anything about. There's probably about maybe a half a dozen guitars like that, like ones that I wouldn't trust to be usable at all.
Yeah.
And
guitar-shaped objects.
Exactly. It's not it's the to get to pile when I've got some free time. And then I go through my process too, which is like, cool, I'm going to make a list of all the stuff I need to do. And I'll give you an example. I have a snakeskin BC Rich, like it's one of the plywood ones. Like it's not a good one.
I forgot about that guitar.
Yeah, I paid $50 for it. And it's a cool guitar. It looks really cool. But I put a pink PAF Pro in it in 2016.
Nice.
And that needed to I need to put the strings back on it, basically, and I haven't done it since then. So that's been 7 years. So the pickup's just hanging out of it. So anyway, I get to this point where I'll just do a to-do list of all the stuff to fix, or amps that need to be done, or cable wiring, and then I get really motivated, and I get about maybe 20% through the list and move on to the next thing. So I made a list at the end of 2020, and I think I actually completed it after a year. Which
Wow,
I was happy about that.
That's an achievement.
But yeah, before we get on to today's topic, Uncle Leon, I guess we recorded a little episode with Uncle Jason Tong from Headfirst Amps last week. I guess we'll put that out. Do you want to put that out this week as well?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we could go,
we haven't really spoken about it.
Yeah.
But we've got that in the can. Ready to come.
That one will either be out and this is old news, or it will not be out and it's exciting news.
Yeah, it was awesome. I mean, we spoke to Jason for about 2.5 hours probably.
Yeah,
could have done a long. Oh, it's like we got to the 2-hour mark and we were just getting started, which I knew was going to happen. Because we do that. I mean, Jason mentioned, he's like, yeah, it took you guys what did he say? He listened to an episode of ours and it took 30 minutes before we got onto the topic, kind of like today.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's what happens, mate. You got to talk about guitars. You got to talk about football. And
you got to acknowledge the excellent supporters of the podcast
exactly.
who tune in every week and subscribe and tell their mates.
But yeah, my point was after that conversation, I mean, I've pretty much spent every possible moment watching videos on Jason's channel about how to mod amps, and now I think I'm gonna maybe risk my life and do it myself, mod one of my amps. I'm not sure what amp, I'm not sure what mod, but I just think I need to give it a shot. So that's going to be exciting.
That's very exciting. Very, very exciting.
But that's not our topic for today, Uncle Leon. That's not it at all. Do you know what else is not our topic?
What is not our topic?
How Bulldogs are going to play Rory Lobb on the wing this year.
It's an interesting one, the Richo model.
Yeah. So
remember when Richo had that second wind in his career where they played him on the wing? I love a big unit on the wing.
Yeah. Well, that's not the topic. So everyone just calm down, cool your jets.
Calm down, go and listen to one of the other podcasts about AFL.
Just type in Kane Corn's opinions and I'm sure you'll find something. Leon, what do you want to talk about today, mate?
Is Kane Corn's the Glenn Fricker of football?
I don't actually know how people generally feel about Glenn Fricker. I know how I feel about some of his opinions, but I mean, yeah. I also have some opinions about some other very popular YouTube celebrity music celebrities. One grey-haired one that shall remain nameless.
Yes.
Because I get in trouble whenever I bring up my opinions on him.
Oh yeah, not really. It's a bit taboo these days, isn't it, to not be into Lord Voldemort?
But anyway, we're all about positivity, mate.
We're all about positivity and talking about things we like. As my mum always said when I was a child, if you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all.
Good advice.
And then the internet was invented.
Yep. And you're like, Margs, check this out. Everyone's saying you're wrong.
Yeah, everyone's mum. Look, I hate to break it to you, but you're wrong. People love to say not nice things. But anyway, I think my mum's advice still stands. So, we kind of, in the little preamble, we were talking about selling stuff. So maybe this should be the greatest hits of anti-gas. Gas being, of course, gear acquisition syndrome. What are some of your proudest and or most regrettable moments with flipping stuff and selling it? Maybe things that you've looked at and gone, yeah, that was a good time to sell that. And other times where you're like, yeah, I probably shouldn't have sold that. I didn't know what I had.
Yep. Yeah, well, look, considering the amount of stuff you and I both have, it's fair to say that we are, I wouldn't say hoarders, but pretty close to it.
Adjacent to hoarding.
Yeah, there's stuff that I feel is quite disposable in the realm of guitars. So pedals, I have no problem getting rid of a pedal.
Yep.
Because there's a million of them. They're all about the same. Guitars, I tend to keep, which semi comes down to one comment that one friend of mine made in about 2005, in which he said, I'll never sell a guitar. And that was it. I was like, yeah, you know what? I also will never sell a guitar now. But it's kind of, you never know, you get so attached to an instrument because it's in your hands and you can I've got guitars I haven't played in years, but I've got so much sentimental attachment to them. I just don't really want to remove them from my life. So yeah, I sort of feel like that. There's a few exceptions to that. There's been stuff that I've bought, for example, I might have mentioned this on a different podcast, but I used to buy really cheap guitars so that I could do silly things to them. Like I've put rhinestones on guitars, I've decoupaged guitars, and that's just a fun hobby activity. So I have, like, for example, bought cheap Squires to do that with, and then the guitar sits there for a year and I go, oh, I can't be bothered with this. I'm just going to flip it. So, but anything that's reasonable, I'll tend to keep it. But amps are probably some in a bit of a gray area, because there are amps that exist where it's like, if I sold my DSL, I reckon I could find another DSL that would sound exactly the same.
Yeah. But your Marshall.
By Marshall, I don't think I can ever bring myself, my Super Lead 1977, I don't think I could bring myself to remove that. That's just, I'm not going to replace that exact amp, right? But yeah, the first thing I guess I'll bring up in stuff that I've sold recently was, you know, when I was selling stuff so I could get my KHE amp switcher and a list a couple of years ago, because I mostly like paid for that entire upgrade with stuff that I'd sold. So I ended up in a pretty even position. But I sold a couple of guitar cabs, which at the time I wasn't obsessed with guitar cabinets and speakers. I was obsessed with amplifiers and rack preamps and stuff. But I sold two cabs. One of them was a Mesa traditional 4x12 with V30s. I think it's from around 2008, 2009. And partly I sold it because, I mean, I knew like Mesa cabs retain value, right?
Yes, big time.
So I got that very, very cheap. I got that from a friend of ours, Umi, when he moved away. And I used it for a bit in the studio and it was cool, but it's really heavy, so I never really wanted to take it out of the studio. And I also have another great vintage 30 cab that I like more. So I was kind of like, ugh, I don't really need the two of these. And I thought this is kind of okay to move on. I think I got about 900, 950 for it, somewhere around there, Australian, obviously. But I sort of, now that I've going through my speaker phase, I really would like to have experimented a little bit more with how they sound and try them with different amps and different cabinets. And yeah, I kind of wish I'd maybe held on to it for another 6 months. So that's kind of the first one. And the other cab that I sold, I'm a little bit more disappointed with, but it was a cab that I didn't build it, but I sort of slapped it together. So it was a purple 4x12.
I remember that thing, yeah.
Empty cab. I paid $120 for it, secondhand, and the owner had Retolexed it and also put like a basket weave grill on the front. Just looked really cool. I ended up buying handles for it, which was such a pain in the ass and so expensive. I put casters on it and like I made it like usable. And then I also I had to buy some speakers. So I put a pair of greenbacks in it, a G1275 H30th anniversary. I think that's the name.
Yep.
And a warehouse veteran 30 as well. So it was a bit of a bit of a pig cabinet, but I was like, oh, this will be a cool studio cab. And I put that together in 2018 and I plugged it in one time and I don't think I ever bothered recording with it, which is a shame. And that's why I sold it, obviously. But again, now I've gone through such a speaker thing. I really, really, I only just bought the G1275H recently, like another one of those to compare. But I wish I'd given it more of a shot when I had the other cabinet. And same as the Veteran 30, I would like to have shot that out against a Vintage 30 to see sort of where it compares. So recently, those are kind of the things. The purple cabinet actually came up for sale about 6 months or so after I sold it.
Yeah, right.
And I messaged the guy. I saw it. I mean, it's a very, you can tell it's the same cab. Like, it's you wouldn't mistake it. And I sent him a message within like 3 hours, 4 hours of him putting it up, and he listed it for more than I had it for sale. I think I sold it for maybe $500. He had it up for like $700. And I messaged him like, hey man, I'd love to buy my cab back. And he's like, sorry, it's already sold. I'm like, fuck. So not only did I not make it, but he also made $200 on it. I'm like, ugh. So that's my start, mate. Those are some gear regrets. What about you?
Yeah, I like the idea that it's consolidation. You know, that's definitely one reason, you know, if you're in a position where you don't really need this stuff, but maybe something else pops up that catches your eye, I'm a fan of that. Because, you know, you sort of accumulate things.
Yep.
Where it's like, oh, yeah, that's a good price for that pedal, or that's a good price for that amp or cab. And I know for me, one was when I bought my first Axe effects. I remember basically flipping as many pedals as I could. Like I had heaps of stuff, and I was like, right, I'm going to see how much I can make out of these things. And are literally just kind of sitting around. I'd acquired them over time, and again, stuff that had popped up for good prices and things like that. And I really had this mentality of, you're getting something that you're gonna, use on tour. It's a functional piece of gear. It's going to mean that you don't need to take a whole bunch of other things.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I just kind of went hog wild. It was like ruthless. Like, just, if I can sell it, I will. So I remember listing a bunch of stuff. I had a bunch of the Eventide factor pedals, like the pitch factor and the mod factor.
Oh, yeah.
I really liked it. Yeah, they were awesome. And maybe that was when I bought an H9. I think what I did, this is a separate instance, like, crossing streams here, but yeah, I remember I had 3 of those, and I think I sold them and bought an H9.
Mm-hmm.
But if you registered the pedal, you got like H9 algorithm coupons. So I kind of, I registered them and then sold them, and then that way got more perceived value out of the H9. And it was basically like, I had one delay and like 2 effects that I used in the mod factor, and maybe a pitch detune thing. So I knew what I wanted out of the pedal, and it was a bit of a no-brainer. And I actually remember being in the gym, and for whatever reason, there were these little bricks in the stretching area where, I don't know what the labeling was, but I always remember it was like, H2, H3, and one of them was H9. And I just remember like staring at this thing going, oh yeah, H9, that's a pretty cool pedal, and being like, oh, I could just flip a bunch of stuff and buy one. So yeah, that's pretty funny. But yeah, and then doing a similar thing with my Axe effects, where I just had a bunch of like, overdrive pedals and just bits and pieces. I think I ended up selling off the remnants of my old board that I was using, that was like, a switcher and stuff that I got in trades and things like that. The whole trades thing is haven't done a lot of trades for gear, but I feel like I've had some cool ones. So yeah, and like old pickups and just whatever you can flip on marketplace, to sort of tell yourself that it's like, oh, I'm only paying
$200 instead of $450. That's fine. Yeah, exactly. That's a win.
Yeah, exactly. So you kind of get that. It feels like gear recycling.
Yeah, the trade thing's interesting. I'm sort of in the same boat. I don't really have that card to play too often, because I feel like the things that I have of value are the things that I just want to keep. There's a few people locally that are so ruthless with the things they sell and get so obsessed for like,
5 minutes.
Yeah, 3 minutes, 5 minutes on something, and then it's gone the next week, which I can appreciate, because clearly it doesn't mean anything to them to keep it. They don't have the same emotional attachment. That's probably healthier.
Yeah.
But the like recently trading stuff, I remember the 2x12 cabinet that I got rid of. It's purple 2x12. I got a rat for that, so that was cool. Because I got the cabinet essentially for free as just a bonus with the other cabinet I bought. So that was kind of cool. Felt bad about selling it. But yeah, I can't think of too many other things I've traded. I do often put it up if there's not a specific thing I'm trying to purchase, and I've got something up that's maybe over the value of $500. I'll sort of say, oh look, if you got something, we can talk.
Yeah, exactly. But it's got to be a very specific thing. A lot of the time, I feel like I'm just wasting people's time, because it's like, yeah, come at me with like a Boogie 2C Plus with a graphic EQ, or it's in that I don't really want to trade for something. I'd much rather just, and I get that, like, I'm selling some pedals at the moment, and I get every second message is, oh, you open to trades, and it's like, not really. Unless it sits there for like 6 months and someone's like, hey, I've got some weird thing, do you want to try it? So, but if it's like, oh yeah, I've got a Tube Screamer clone, do you want to trade it for a Blues Driver clone? It's like, well, I know I'm going to plug it in once and use it, and that's kind of going to be it. So yeah, I mean, I feel like with the H9 and the Axe effects, like they got used a lot. That was a nice consolidation. I've done a few trades as well. I've sold some stuff like a few guitars, I think like massively undervalue to some mates, which is I feel less bad about, where it's like, hey, here's something that maybe needs work, or something that they could use, where it's like, just just tell me what it's worth to you, and I'm okay with it. So
Yeah.
that's kind of a different thing. It's you gotta be ruthless on these things. So the other thing as well is, there's that element of like, oh, I paid X amount for something, and that was a pretty good deal, and then I can sell it and make $200, and then I can justify some other stupid purchase.
The old flippy do.
Yeah, flipping. Which, I mean, there's some people in Perth who are notorious flippers.
Yeah.
It's like if you're dealing with them, you're getting kind of ripped off.
There's a couple people that I don't. There's one in particular that I just ignore whenever they post some stuff, because I know I know how much they've sort of shafted other people out of pretty good money.
Yeah.
Which maybe shafting is the wrong word. It's people pay the value of what it's worth, I suppose, but I don't know. I don't really like the flipping side of gear exchange. I think like making your money back on something is fair. Making a tiny bit, maybe, if that's what the market dictates. But like, I've seen it happen so much. Like, I mean, outside of this one person, I can think recently there was I think it was an early or mid 70s Marshall Artiste on Gumtree, and it was up for like $250, like nothing. And I was like, I don't really know anything about those amps. I Googled it. I was like, well, this is not loved, but it's a Marshall. It's Valve Marshall. Like, go on. I sent the person a message, and by the time I saw the ad, which is only after a couple of hours, it had gone. Like, maybe 3 weeks later, you check Gumtree, it's listed for like $2,000. It's like, it's so cheeky. It's like there's no intention to play it. There's no intention to like. It's just a money grab, and it's a first come. Just get in there, and I just don't really appreciate that too much.
Bit of an eye roller. I'm like, hey, fair enough. That's that's how it works. But also, there's also the, I've bought a $400 guitar and I've put $300 worth of parts in it, and I'm selling it for $750.
Yeah.
Thing, which you see so much. And I don't know who buys those things. I don't know how that's attractive to anybody, but it's like someone's mangled a new guitar, and they're just, it's a foreign mentality to me, where it's like, yeah, there is the argument to be made that like, yeah, maybe you've made something better, but, or like, I've seen stuff where it's like a newish PRS or Gibson, and it's, I've put these pickups in there, and you kind of add up, okay, you bought the guitar new and you've bought the parts new, then why are you selling it at like a 10% premium on top of that?
Yep.
There's also the the JHS effect thing, where it's like, some piece of gear becomes really popular for some reason, and like you have it.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I should sell it. Which I don't think I've ever done. I don't think I've really ever had anything that's sort of in that, oh, cool. Like now I finally I can sell my Digitech Distortion Factory for an extra $50.
Yeah. Oh, I didn't even really think about it with my Bad Monkey. I thought like that it's such a splash in the pan. They're going to be back to a normal price. I haven't checked recently. Okay. I wonder if they have gone back to $50 or whatever. But it's still sort of valuable, or not valuable, useful. That's not valuable, and I'll just keep it. So yeah, someone will use it. There'll be a time, I was going to say, in terms of like other sort of regrets and stuff, maybe not regrets, but it's funny you bring up the Axe FX and some of the things you sold, because I mean, that same Axe FX, as we have discussed before, was my Axe FX.
Yeah. And
I got that back in 2011. But I remember when I like committed to buy it, and I was looking through all the pedals and the models that are in it, and
add up the list price of all these things.
Well, I was like, there's a exotic BB pre in there, and I have one, and I don't really care for mine so much, so I'm just going to flip it for $150, and then that's going to offset the cost of it. But there wasn't too many things in the Axe FX at that point that I had that I thought I could justify by selling.
Yeah, right.
But there was a period, because I reckon I only had it for a year and a half, and I did use it. I had some, like toured with it a little bit. It was a valuable piece of gear to me, and
Yep.
it was probably more valuable to sell it and pay for that trip to America rather than to keep it. But there was a few moments afterwards where I was like, oh, really wish I just still had it. It would be so useful
Yeah,
to
yeah.
do for this situation, that situation. And it's all sort of worked out well. You know, it's who knows
And here
what.
we are years later.
Yeah. But I think it's like that unit, when I did sell it, and there was no Axe Effect. Sorry, no, there was an Axe FX2 at that point. The Axe FX2 had
But
come
it
out.
was
But there,
down here.
yeah, there was no AX8 because I know that came out a little bit later. But in my brain, I was always like, well, there isn't an infinite number of these, but there's enough of them where I could buy it back probably for the same cost. Weirdly enough, like I've still seen those things, like the Ultras go for like $1,000.
Yeah, they've weirdly held their value, hey?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was about 1,600 is what it cost to get that unit here in 2011.
That's what I paid for it in 2016.
So there you go. That's what I would have sold it to Ryan for as well.
Yeah.
So it's just so funny that it's gone like that with that unit, and then it's still obviously really cool and really useful. So yeah, I did have an Axe FX2 here for a little bit, but I really just never played it. I didn't have a use for it and didn't have a need for it. But I did have a few moments of thinking it would be really useful to have it in the rack, just to run it as effects for like either pre or post sort of thing.
It's interesting as well because the Ultra, the looper is in the delay block, and you can have two delays. You can run two loopers in it, which none of the subsequent.
Oh wow!
Yeah. There's a few like things that you can't do, and you know, I know the Ultra has a JCM 900 model and a Cornford Richie Kotzen model, and
is that right?
Yeah, there's a few models that kind of never got redone, which is interesting.
Is there no 900 in the Axe FX?
Nope.
Really? Wow. Yep. That's so surprising.
There's no DSL either, which has been hotly requested.
Yeah, by you?
Yeah, it's like me and Justin York just constantly pestering Cliff, like, hey, and I know Justin's got a couple. Speaking of which, it would be very cool to have Justin on the Gear podcast at some point. I should send the feelers out, talk about all sorts of stuff. Yeah, I know Justin's got an SLX 900 as well, which he really, really rates. So,
you don't have an SLX, do you?
No, I've got a Mark III.
That's right. Yeah, I always forget that.
Yeah, the SLX, I think they're similar-ish, but, you know, people kind of tend to like them a little bit more. I think I forget, there's also the, like, Slash signature that came out around a similar time. I know Kush had or still has one of the Slash ones, and that sounds great, like the early, whatever.
I didn't realize that's how it was branded. That's funny. Like, so there was a 900 Slash, is what you're saying?
There was an early Slash signature model. Like there's the AFD, which was a more recent thing. But yeah, there's a Slash Marshall. Can't remember if it's a JCM 900 or not. But,
I was reading about the AFD last night. Like, so the AFD, that's a Sir 39, is that right? Or the Sir 36?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And that's a Santiago Alvarez era Marshall as well.
Right.
So JVM, YJM 100 and AFD, he was like basically responsible for the AFD. So speaking of which, Santiago, if you happen to be listening to this, we would love to have you on. Somebody else I should message as well. I'm just going to be just firing off emails left, right, and center over the next
We should interview John Sykes. Let's just get him on. Let's get Mark McGowan on. We can interview him. You know, did a gig with him.
Mate.
My mate. Just get everyone on, mate.
Someone who likes AC/DC more than you.
I loved the high voltage thing. Like Mark McGowan was wearing a Back in Black t-shirt, and it was basically a big Bon Scott love fest. And one of the comments was like, "Yeah, Bon didn't even sing on Back in Black."
There's an AC/DC conspiracy theory iceberg, isn't there? Like, secretly Bon wrote it, and
is that an actual conspiracy? That's really funny.
Yeah. There's the Bon Scott wrote Back in Black section of the internet.
Wow.
We do not need to go down there. Speaking of Marshalls, though, because another gear cull I had was when I bought my Cherry Tone. I had to get to the Atomica spec, which is pretty cool. I sold a lot of amps around that time. So I had a vintage modern, which is a really, really cool amp. And I think I paid
$300
for it or something. Friend of the podcast, Ben Wilson, facilitated that purchase. So I forget what I sold it for, but
more than $300.
Yeah, more than $300. I made some money on it. And then I had an orange Dark Terror that I sold.
Oh, yeah, that's right. You gigged with that a few times too.
That was cool. It had an effects loop, which I liked. That was a pretty cool sounding amp. What else did I have? I had a Laney VH 100.
Oh, yeah.
You had the 50, hey?
Yep, the GH50.
Yeah,
Chris has that. He might be listening. So that was a really cool amp.
Yeah. They're great. They're just like an 800 with a choke.
Yeah,
a toroidal transformer. Which is cool.
It's one of the few. Look, it's one of the few amps I've sold. I don't know if I regret it because I think I would be able to get it back again. But you know, I paid such little money for it. I sold it for what it was worth. It was like no harm, no foul sort of thing.
I had a little 1x12 Ampeg cabinet that I bought when Billy Hyde Music closed.
Yep.
And I had a Jet City 50 that I also bought when Billy Hyde closed. That I think I paid $150 for.
I was thinking about that Jet City last night. I'm still disappointed I didn't buy that off you. I should have just done it because I have a JC A20, so the 20 watt, and it's awesome. It's won it's won so many shootouts. Like if I've struggled to get a guitar sound with someone, it's weird. I have a theory about Perth guitar players and where they trained. Let's just say that there's a little bit of a thing of what the amount, like Leon, you and I, the amount of distortion that we like is like 80% more distortion than what's allowed out of this specific place. And subsequently
institution, this educational academy.
And so as a result, the guitar players, when they've come into the studio and I've tried to dial in tones, are like, oh, I just got too much gain on it. And so I'll turn like my Marshall down or these things, and it just doesn't quite have the right vibe. And I put this Jet City up and it's perfect. So it's a really cool amp and I really like it. But the 50 watt, I watched one of Jason's mod videos about doing the 50. And it's just like we did quite a lot of recording with it. You got it for so cheap. It would have just been such a cool amp to have still around. But
it's a bit of a regret actually, because I feel like now knowing what I know about amps and knowing someone like Jason, it'd be so cool to just send it over to him and say, mate, go to town. It was noisy.
Yep. Like
considerably more noisy than my Soldano. Just when it was like idling, like it was really hissy. So I'm sure there's a few mods, like very basic, like, probably swap a bunch of caps out and bring that sort of thing down. But really, really cool amp. And there's a few things that I bought from that Billy Hyde sale actually, which I still use. Like I got a really, really long speaker cable. That's a 30-meter speaker cable or something that's been super duper handy. Just to, you have the head in the control room and you put the cab under the stairs or in the next room and mic it up. So I really like that. Yeah, probably out of all of those, the JCA, the vintage modern was cool, but I've got other things that kind of cover those flavors.
Yep.
And then the Cherry Tone's awesome.
You sold the Son of Yeti for that as well, is that right?
I did, yeah. I sold I just sold that for what I paid for it. We picked up a lot of stuff from our mate Seb when he moved to Ukraine, of all places.
So here's the list. Mesa Boogie dual rectifier.
Refinished in hot pink.
Yeah, 3-channel. We got that. We got a Cherry Tone DC30 clone. We got the Cherry Tone Cherry Tone Son of Yeti, and those amps in total. I was telling Jason about this the other day, and I think the number was wrong, but it was at $1,500 Australian total.
Something ridiculous.
It was either 15 or it might have even been 1,200, but I remember my 2 amps were $1,000. So $500 for the Recto, $500 for the Cherry Tone, which, I mean, that's, in terms of Australian retail price, that's probably closer to $7,000, $6,000 maybe. Yeah. So we got super lucky with that. And
you also spent like, a lot more money on stuff that's now in your studio.
Yeah, I picked up my Focal twins from Seb. We got a 60-channel Audient mixing console. By we, I mean the Vic down in the studio downstairs.
Yeah.
computer. We've got
Like Seb kind of goes down in gear history as like, you know, most legendary dude ever.
Yeah, he really hooked us up. We got super lucky. I mean, there was
As much as he would hate the accolades, you know.
yeah. I mean,
Really
like yeah. So sorry, just to reiterate the story a little bit. So this was about 5 years ago, and he had some studio gear for sale, and I went and bought it. We sort of got talking, ended up going to his warehouse where he had all his stuff stored. And I asked Leon to come as well because I couldn't fit. I was picking up some racks, some 16-unit racks, and I couldn't fit them both in my car. So Leon came. And yeah, we just ended up, he said, oh, look, you know, come, I've only got 5 minutes and I got to leave. I'm like, okay, no sweat. We went in there, walked in, and it's a warehouse filled with the coolest gear you've ever seen. And all of it had to be sold. And we're talking guitars, amps, studio gear, studio monitors, snare drums, pinball machines, the whole.
You know, we're talking about, oh yeah, I regret selling an amp because I sold 5 things to buy some other thing. It's like, this is someone who just bought gear to use it themselves. They'd never sold anything, and then they were in a position where they had to sell everything. That was confronting.
Yeah, but he was awesome. Like, you know, said he told me up front, I've got 5 minutes and I got to go. And then after about 15 minutes, I remember saying to him like, oh, hey man, I know you got to go. Should we get out of here? He's like, no, it's cool. I just didn't really want to hang out with you guys, but you're cool. Like,
yeah,
you stay for a bit.
I say that because I don't want to deal with tire kickers. And then it was like, come in. And I was not prepared for.
Yeah. We were there for about 2 hours that night. And I think we walked away with those amps on that night. Yeah. And then spent the next 6 months pretty much going and visiting him quite a lot. And we put some people on to him to try and buy some stuff too. So he was awesome. But I think like just to finish that little story, my favorite of those trips out there is he just messaged me and he said, hey man, I'm going through my mezzanine at the warehouse and I've got to throw a bunch of stuff in the garbage. If you want any of it, come now or come this afternoon and take what you want. I'm like, cool, no worries. So, you know, Leon and I both went down. And yeah, literally getting up on a ladder and there's effectively a room's worth of stuff. And there was like smoke machine, there was projector, there was green screens and all that stuff there. There was a bunch of old Behringer rack units, like the reverb units, delays or reverb, like just stuff, you know, mic preamps, like Behringer mic preamps. And then he's like, we loaded it all down and he's like, oh yeah, you guys like porn? I was like, what? He's like, yeah, I just found 2 boxes of VHS porn. I'm like, what? And it brings it down. Sure enough, there was literally like 100 tapes. Like,
and this is the real thing. He's paid retail price for these, you know.
No, you know what? He didn't pay retail price for it. He paid like $10 per tape. He was like, yeah, I used to be able to get him like.
They still had the stickers on them. Though.
Yeah, I think a lot of that was. I don't know how he got it, but he said it was like, yeah, you used to be able to get them for like $10 each or something. So
yeah, it's a new guy.
Yeah, so that was really funny. So Seb, if you are listening, sorry for throwing you under the bus with that one, but still got the boxes. They've never been used, never been watched, but
they're in an airtight, laser protected.
Well, I watched a
It is a bit of a that was like, oh, I remember when I was too young to know what this stuff was, but like some of my friends had older brothers where, you know, they'd give you a sneak peek or something and just be like, oh, that looks, hang on, what's this? So yeah, seeing just this entire box of, you know, all 90s stuff as well. So in that transitional era from, I guess, the that classic era to like the super hardcore era.
And I'll just say, when I say a box, I'm talking about like the packing case of a microwave. So including, you know, the foam, like what all the foam like would do to make a microwave fit, a big microwave fit in a cardboard box.
This is packed in wall to wall.
It's very funny. And again, I haven't watched them. I've kept them because I think it's so funny to have 2 enormous boxes worth of VHS porn. But yeah, I was going to say, I watched a video with Joe Barresi a little while ago. And I think it was when he had maybe Parkway Drive-In or something recording.
Yeah, another connoisseur.
Well, yeah, they just had apparently a TV running like 24 hours a day with porn on it. I'm like, oh, that's pretty funny. So maybe I'll get that hooked up one day for the right project. Just bam, throw it on there. That'd be kind of funny. So yeah, we'll stop talking about adult themes. In terms
And get
of,
being children.
yeah. But yeah, so I was gonna say your Jet City. I really, I regret not buying that off you. I mean, there's stuff that you've sold and that I've sold. We've ended up just picking it up off each other because
Yeah.
we just want to keep it. Stuff that I probably, I don't really regret buying it, but like I got your Strymon Big Sky when you decided to sell that a couple of years ago, and I bought it with the intention that like I was gonna run. I had it set up. I had everything wired in like this, but
You're going to do the Tim Pierce thing where he's got all the...
oh, not quite. A little different to that. So I have, for a quick description, because probably most people haven't seen my studio, but I have currently two 16 RU rack cases to my right hand, and they're filled with, like, one of them's filled with all the compressors, one of them's filled with all the audio interfaces and patch bays and stuff. And I used to have a third one, which actually is also Leon's.
That's right.
And
I need to get that. It just doesn't fit in my car.
I know, it's just taking up space, but so does everything in the studio. But anyway, I filled that rack case with a bunch of effects units because in my brain I was thinking, like, you know what? I have a lot of effects units that some old, like ones I might have bought for guitar rigs, like a quadriverb, and
Yep.
I mean, you're never probably going to pick a quadriverb over another unit, but if I've got it, why don't we hook it up and maybe this will be a thing to try. So I had that in there. I had your Rev 7 as well, your Yamaha Rev 7.
Yep.
I had SPX 90. I had Effectron, Delta Lab Effectron, which by the way, it's a single that I saw one listed a couple of days ago for $600. I'm like, that's not
they're desirable now.
I tell you what, I'll sell mine for $600. Jesus Christ, I paid $50 for it. But anyway, that entire rack I'd intended to be effects, and that's what I bought the Big Sky for, because I thought there is a thing about those reverbs that would be really cool to have in a mix, because they sound.
Then what happened, Troy?
Well, then they released the plugin, and I thought, well, I haven't used this unit in the way I thought I was going to use it. So if I want to do that, I'll just buy the plugin and use it instead. So I sold the pedal, which again, I don't really regret doing that. I think the money was better used on, some other piece of gear that I didn't need. I reckon it's probably 12 months ago or so that I sold it. I bought that and I bought your Strymon Dig at the same time. And the Dig I think I will keep because I do like that. I think it's a pretty rockin' delay, which you got that at the moment as well.
It's here at the moment, yeah. So I did a video with it. I should probably, the next time I see you, I'll bring it back.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of other gear flipping situations that I've had. I've definitely been on the end of some very, very good deals.
I think most of the deals that you and I have are pretty good. Hopefully this podcast doesn't ruin that possibility. I
don't ever sell gear to these guys because they're just ripping you off. But yeah, there's been a few things as well where, for me, it's either consolidation where I can see I've got a bunch of stuff and I go, hey, I can do this in a much easier fashion, or it's the afterglow of, you buy a new thing where it's like, oh, I buy a new guitar or I buy a particular piece of gear and then kind of realize, well, I've got things that I'm just hanging on to for the sake of hanging on to where I'm realistically never going to use them. So either organize them and use them or don't. And sometimes it's as easy as buying a new set of strings, And like that's one of the best mods you can make to your guitar is just change the strings and then play it. And you're like, oh, actually, no, this is pretty cool.
Yep.
But I have done that with guitars and then sort of gone, why have I been hanging on to this? Because now that I actually have bothered to change the strings, it's doing even less for me. So I can always kind of find, mostly I won't say a necessity for me, but it's a be responsible kind of thing. It's a look yourself in the mirror and be like, mate, what are you doing with your life? Just reset it, and then it will just slowly, the problem will get worse and worse and worse again until you have to clear out. So and sometimes it's, I've sold bits of gear because I want to upgrade my computer. So a bunch of pedals, bunch of pedals that I'm never going to use. Why not just have a faster computer for video editing and recording?
Yep, absolutely. Amen.
And
I've got.
I know as well.
Sorry, you go.
Sorry, the last one was when I first got my Axe effects, I also got a Matrix power amp, and I was like, oh, it'd be cool to still run a cab. So remember that Boogie 2x12 that I had?
Oh yeah, I do.
Yeah, it was okay. Like I loved that I had a Boogie 2x12, but it was like super beamy, and I think I swapped the speakers at some point. I did a bunch of stuff to it, and I ended up a buddy of mine just sort of hit me up, and he's like, "Oh, hey, I know you've got a Mesa 2x12. I'm thinking of buying one." And I was like, "You want to buy this one?" And that was kind of a good feeling to just sort of be like, "Yeah, I've never really loved this cab. It's been okay and it's been handy, but getting rid of it was a bit of a rite of passage. Like, want to own a Mesa cab? I had it. It was okay. It probably wasn't right for me.
It's quite small, like quite a small cabinet, right?
It was the compact one, yeah. So maybe if I ever did it again, like a full size. I think if I ever do it again, I'll just get like a proper oversized traditional straight cab.
I'm always keeping an eye out for those cabs. Like, I think that's there's been a few that have come up. There's still a little more than I want to spend. One came up about 3 months ago for $500, and I'm kicking myself for not getting it, but I just missed it. It was missed it by probably about 20 minutes. But yeah, I was like that Mesa cab. I can remember when you guys did the Back to Zero launch in 2016. Yep. I remember being a little bit disappointed that that's the cab you used for that. Or I think that was the cab you used for that. But it was like,
I was still like, the Axe was still going to front of house.
Yeah. But it's like, it just would have been cool to have a proper 4x12, but that's just a aesthetic thing. But yeah, we recorded with it. We tried to record with it a few times, and I think you shot some IRs with it as well.
I still have the IRs. There's one IR which was pretty cool. I think it was like I borrowed a Royer off you, and it's an SM7 and a Royer, but two different speakers. And yeah, anyone who's aware of the John Petrucci, how he would mic up a 212. I tried to do that, and it's pretty cool. I think I've probably still got it somewhere. I think I shared it on Exchange, so people can look that one up. I probably called it like JP Mix or something like that. But yeah, it was just.
I was never sold. I was never 100% sold on it. I think I was actually looking at 2x12s today, because I want to the school I teach at. Like, I would like to really get some new amps for that place, because currently there's a JCM 900 high gain dual reverb 50 watt and a Laney GH50, and then the cabinets are there's a couple other like combos and stuff around, but there's a Hot Rod Deluxe and AC15, I think, and they're okay. But I'm a head and cabinet guy. Yeah, the cabinets, there's like a JCM 900 cab, so with T75s in it, and that's okay. And then the Laney cab, I think, has the 7080s, but it sounds pretty like average. But so I got a bit of a wish list of amps, because I have been thinking for a few years, if I could get anything for that place, what would actually be valuable and useful.
Yeah.
And because I've been doing so much so much watching of Jason's channel, I've been sort of like, the Studio Classic and the Studio Vintage are probably the perfect amp for that situation. Because one thing about trying to teach is, like, you imagine if you set up, this is the way extreme, but a Mark V or a Mark VII, and you show that to some students that maybe are used to dialing in like a Boss Katana, or used to dialing in like a Fender Deluxe or something. It's such...
probably just they've never dialed anything in their life. They've just turned it up.
Yeah, you can't... You have to really have a bit of, like, have the time and the want to, like, get a sound out of it, and the need to get a sound out of it. It's just too confusing. Whereas, like, you take the Studio Classic, I think that's like the JCM 800 thing. It's so easy. It's like 6 knobs or something. You plug into it, you turn it up, and it is what it is. And because it's 20 watts, it's not going to be as blisteringly loud as a 100-watt JCM 800.
And they're well priced as well.
Yeah. So I sort of, in terms of like what I think would be useful, like one of those ones, a 50-watt 5153, I think is for like modern high gain. That's... Those two things would cover a lot of bases, and you've already got your Fenders and your Voxes there. But I was like, well, need another cab, like realistically, need some vintage 30s. And I started looking around, but like a 4x12 V30 cab is still like a little bit spendy. like to get something new. Obviously, secondhand's like a little bit different, but I was thinking, oh, maybe a 2x12, but I don't know if I would be completely satisfied only having a 2x12 as like the main recording cab. Maybe it's fine. Like it's not, there's nothing wrong with it, but I just have almost always preferred something about a 4x12. Like, I don't know if it's just the dimensions of the cabinet, if that is really just giving that extra like little 5-10% of what I like in a guitar sound. I think you'd be doing a disservice to run those amps through something quite like a little bit smaller. So of course, then I realized, why don't I just get like a V30 speaker and a greenback speaker and chuck it in one of those cabs? That's probably the way of doing it. But
buy a cheap 1960A or something that's been beaten up and just speaker swap.
Yep. Because I mean, like a V30 is only like $200 Australian, like one speaker. Yep. And that's really all you need.
It's like, hey kids, here's the good speaker.
Well, I mean, I'm not loving vintage 30s as a general thing, but I think it's for the certain sound that they have and their certain use case. It's a bit of a like, that should be a baseline. It's always like 70%, at least 70% the right choice, unless it's a Splorn Nitro that you're running.
If you're doing live sound, then get used to miking these.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's a reality of the situation, isn't it? So
yeah,
it's pretty interesting. I don't really know if there's any other gear regrets that I have. One was I sold my hotcake pedal, and then I recently rebought a hotcake because it's maybe one of the few pieces of gear where I was like, actually, that thing's cool and unique, and I really just like it. Whereas there's a bunch of other stuff which I sometimes I'm like, oh, it'd be cool to own that again. And then you're like, but why? You sold it for a reason, you moron.
Yeah. I think there's a comfort with it sometimes. Well, I'll tell you one that I did for many years regret. And that was selling my Carbon Quad X. And then thankfully you solved that problem by getting one. And then I heard it again and went, this is not the one. So
the Quad X is like the mascot of this channel, isn't it?
Yeah. There's probably no other podcast or two people in the world talking about the Carbon Quad X as much as we do
right now.
I've got to go get my Marshall 9000 power amp soon from Lee. So I'm like really on the fence about that. This is in the same category of what we're talking about, because it's, I mean, for those of you that know, it's basically like a stereo JCM 800 power amp, sort of.
Yeah. And it weighs just as much as that sounds.
Yeah. It's like a 4 rack unit power amp. It sounds really cool. Mine's in like reasonable condition. But I just don't really use it very much. And I was sort of like, I wanted to keep it because it's a cool power amp. Like, it's a cool piece of gear. I got it for a pretty reasonable price, but I think if I really want a power amp for my studio to use with, say, like the Synergy stuff, or to use with 80AMP1, there's probably other units, or especially to use it with a modeler. There's probably other units out there, like the at the very least, like a Fright power station, because you can also use it for so many other situations.
It's a utility device.
Yeah. So in terms of that, like one in, one out, or the like, I wouldn't be able to sell it and go out and buy a power station. It's just not going to bring in enough money to do that. But it would be, there's a certain attachment. I remember when I bought it, man, it's really funny. It was 2017 2016. And I bought it on my 9-year anniversary, like with Amy, and like, just that's the whatever we celebrate, like, because we're not married, but we've been together since, like, and that's actually, that's in 2 days' time as well. How's that?
There you go, mate.
So it's almost a 7-year anniversary of me buying that power amp. But yeah, I remember saying to her, like, we were going out for dinner that night, I was like, oh, I just need to quickly go up to Greenwood and buy something. And so I managed to like duck out, pick that up, and come back, and then like have enough time to get out to go out to
have a succulent Chinese meal.
Yeah, it was actually Japanese. It was awesome.
Oh, awesome.
So I'm on the fence.
I don't know how we can best finish this podcast than that on your anniversary you went and bought some tasty Marshall power amp.
Mate, you got to have it. So, to finish it, I guess I might grab it back, have a little bit of a play on it, and see what it sounds like, see how it does translate with some Synergy modules against, say, the... the Sin head, and we'll take it from there. It's just so big, man. Like it's unfortunate it takes up that much space.
It's a boat anchor times 10.
Yeah, but it's cool. Like some of this stuff is just cool, and I'll never forget, man. Your dad said it a couple of years ago. It's just like if you're sitting amongst it and you look at it and it brings you joy, then that's kind of like not nothing. So
precisely.
Again,
some people call it materialism. Some people call it happiness.
Yep. So
take your pick. I don't think it really, mate. We're all going to be dust again one day. Might as well enjoy the ride while we go.
Did you listen to? You don't listen to Back Chat all the time, hey?
No.
Yeah. Hamish Brayshaw mentioned that about his dead dog. Like, yeah, it's just Ash now.
It's just Ash now. Yeah. Well, mate. Maybe on that note, Troy. Like, what's your preferred post life method? Are you a cremator?
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%.
Yep. No doubt about it.
I figure with me, it's like, having an autoimmune disease, no one wants your organs. So just, put my brain in a vat of liquid and laugh at it for a while. And other than that, just turn me to dust.
You'll be like, one of the heads in Futurama.
That is such a good show, man. Like, I so did not get it as a child, but having rewatched it as an adult, it's quite a beautiful thing.
Yep. Yeah, it's always worth a rewatch. I think it's on Disney now. So
yeah, right.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, there's a writer's strike at the moment, so I'm sure they'll need all the heritage content or IP recycling that they can get. Anyway, mate, I'm going to split. Great podcast.
Hey, mate, you're a bloody Ripper legend. You know that?
Look, Troy, just let it be known, mate. It's not just me who appreciates you. It's everybody else listening as well.
Well, thank you so much for everyone that's checked us out. As always, follow us on the podcast app. Give us a follow on the Instagram. Give us a like. Leave a comment on the YouTube. I haven't checked anything from the last week's episode, so hopefully there are no swear words, naughty words in there.
Oh, there's always a couple of naughty little ones, mate. A few adult themes from time to time, but that's why people tune in.
Yep. And we'll see you probably next week.